This should actually be called How Not to Make Chocolate Stout Salted Caramel Whoopie Pies. I tried to make them a couple of days ago, and it started off easily enough. You mix 1 teaspoon of baking soda with a half a cup of sour cream in one bowl, and you set it aside. Then you mix an egg, half a cup of stout beer, and a teaspoon of vanilla in another bowl, and you set that aside. You then put 2½ cups of flour, a half a cup of unsweetened cocoa powder, and 1 tablespoon of baking powder in a sieve, and you sift it. And then again, you set it aside. Finally, the mixing began. I beat in 1 cup of sugar and a half a cup of butter until it was light and fluffy. Then I added in the beer mixture, and you've got to be careful now because the beer will splatter. Trust me, I know for a fact that it splatters. Now here's where I'm going to note reading the recipe. Anyone who cooks a lot will tell you you should read the recipe through before you actually start. Obviously, I did not do this, otherwise I would not have just dumped in the sour cream, mixed, and then dumped in the flour and mixed. I would have done sour cream, flour, sour cream, flour, sour cream, flour, which is what they wanted you to do. But either way, it all got mixed in, and I had the dough, and that's what you really want. So I had the dough, and again, the recipe called for a piping bag and piping out little bits of the dough into a baking sheet. I did not do this. I made little balls and sort of placed them on the baking sheet. And this was sort of the start of my mistake when it came to these whoopie pies, because when it baked, it actually baked so it looked like a Mexican wedding cookie as opposed to a sort of a little flat domed disc that you could stack. So I put those in a 350-degree oven and let it go for about 10 minutes. Now, while that was baking, I started the caramel portion of the whoopie pie. Now, the buttercream, which is the salted caramel portion, the center of the whoopie pie, is a buttercream, and it called for a third of a cup, of caramel. So I put in a half a cup of sugar and 2 tablespoons of water, and I just put it on a high heat, and I let it go, and I didn't touch it. I swirled it a bit to make sure it was mixed, but pretty much I just let it go. Now, the thing with caramels is you want it to get a nice golden color. You don't want it to be the color of your stout beer, which, as you can see, I let it go for a little too long. I turned my eye away for a second, and then the next thing you know, it's beer color instead of caramel color. But anyway, I took it off the heat. I added in 2 tablespoons of butter, 6 tablespoons of heavy cream, and then a half a teaspoon of salt. And I swirled it together and mixed it, and I set it aside to cool. In another bowl, I put in a cup of butter, again, room temperature butter, and then a cup and a half of powdered sugar, and I mixed it until it was all incorporated, and that was the start of my buttercream. And then I added in a third of the cup of the salted caramel mixture once it had cooled. And I thought it was a little bit too runny, so I put it in the refrigerator to firm up a bit, but as you can see, I had the mixture. So now came the assembly. And as you can see, my little cookies were more like little cakes, and it was hard to sort of have one side down, put in the cream, the center, and then put another side. It was A, too tall, and B, it was just too rounded. It was more like the Leaning Tower of Pisa than a nice whoopie pie. But it was a learning experience. I had fun, and it still tasted good.